I know what you might be thinking. What on earth is African Queen? Well, this is why we do the Hop Chronicles, to figure out what these hops impart. And to do that, I'm going to brew a simple beer, a pale ale, where I use African Queen hops from bittering all the way through to dry hop. See what we get.
This episode is sponsored by Kegland. More on them in a bit.
So let's get started with brew day. I have in here some reverse osmosis water that I've already collected, and to it I'm adding my water salts. In here I have gypsum, 8 grams of that, and calcium chloride, 3 grams of that. And I've already pre-milled my grains. Here they are. Pretty simple grist. In here I have mainly pale malt, that's foundation malt from Epiphany Craft Malts, 10 pounds of that. And then I've added 2 pounds of Vienna malt as well, and that is our standard Brülosophy pale ale malt bill. Sticking with the standards, this is water that will be mashed at 152 Fahrenheit, 67 Celsius for an hour. Now, not to get ahead of things here, but I'm going to be fermenting this beer in a new bit of kit that just came in yesterday. Pretty excited about this one. Let me show you what that is.
And that fermentation vessel actually looks quite familiar to me. It's the Clawhammer keg, but a new version of it. Now, I've brewed with this before, and in fact I'll put out a whole separate video on how to customize it for my glycol system. But Kyle at Clawhammer pointed out there was a bit of a design flaw with the keg, quite memorably. So yeah, if you open one of the ports on the keg while it's still pressurized, bad things can happen. And look, I watched that video of Kyle making that mistake and then made the very same mistake myself a couple of months later. Fortunately, only a couple of PSI, but it's easily done. So they've rectified it, and let me show you how they've done that. It all comes down to this, which is the lid that goes in this. Now, this is the original lid that came with it, and there are a couple of improvements that the new lid has made to this. But primarily the issue here is that if I don't relieve the pressure with this pressure relief valve, but I open this or I open this from the keg, any pressure that's in there is going to come out. And that's not a problem with regular corny kegs. Regular corny kegs like this, they don't have a whole bunch of ports to open. There's just one lid, and it's really well designed, because if I open this and I've forgotten to relieve the pressure, it will actually kind of relieve it for me, and it's impossible pretty much for this thing to come flying out, because the only way you can get it out is to turn it to an angle and then tilt it. These arms here really stop this lid flying off. So how did they fix this with their fermentation keg? Well, here's the new lid. So we've still got a small 1.5-inch tri-clamp port and then this bigger port here, but I can't open them just when I feel like it, because they are now keyed. This requires a key to open it. Where is the key? This is the key here, but the key can't reach anything because it is connected to the pressure relief valve. So the only way I can free it is to remove the pressure relief valve, and now any pressure that's in here is going to come out of here, not putting one of these lids in my face. And I can use this key here to now undo and do up these ports. It's a very clever system. So I think I should be able to use this keg without harming myself in order to make this beer. Initially developed by South African Breweries, that's SAB hop farms, in 1998, and commercially released in 2014, African Queen has a curious history involving limited access to this relatively new variety due to its ownership by none other than AB InBev. As supply increased, brewers were able to get their hands on African Queen, and it quickly developed a reputation for its ability to contribute delightful, pungent, fruity notes ranging from watermelon and gooseberry to passion fruit and lemongrass. Now, it's a dual-purpose hop with alpha acid content on the higher side, 10 to 17%, depending on the crop year. I was curious to see how those qualities would come across in a pale ale, but before we add the hops and get the results from a panel of tasters, a quick word on today's sponsor, Kegland. Kegland are the ultimate destination for all your brewing and dispensing requirements. For example, they offer the reusable Oxybar kegs, which are perfect for sharing beers with friends. I'm a big fan of the versatile Duo-Tight system for liquid and gas hookups. And I serve my beers through Nuka Tap draft beer taps. Kegland also have a killer YouTube channel hosted by Key, where you can learn all about their latest products. Check out all Kegland have to offer at kegland.com.au.
Now, the hop schedule. I want to get 40 IBU of bitterness into this beer, but I also kind of want to add as many hops as possible. So here's what I'm going with. These are the hop additions that are going in the hot side. So I have here 14 grams of hops. This will go in at 30 minutes. Then 28 grams of hops, which will go in at 10 minutes and 5 minutes. And then 56 grams of hops, which will go in at 2 minutes. And I will also be adding a dry hop again of another 56 grams once fermentation is about complete. But notice I'm actually doing a 60-minute boil. I'm not going to add any hops in until 30 minutes though, otherwise I would overshoot my target. Looks like I'm just coming to a boil now, so set a timer for 30 minutes. After all the hops were added, I chilled the wort down using my counterflow chiller and then transferred into my claw hammer keg that I customized using a cool stick. This allows me to connect my glycol chiller to the keg and keep everything at the temperature that I want. So I set the temperature controller to 66 Fahrenheit or 19 Celsius, and then I added my yeast, which is Flagship from Imperial Yeast. Now I have to say, I've not always been the biggest fan of some of my Hop Chronicles beers. The simple malt bill and just a single hop, they often come through as a little bit one-dimensional and, well, a bit boring. But this African Queen Pale Ale did have a touch of complexity to it. There were obvious citrus notes and stone fruit in both the aroma and flavour. I didn't really get blueberry or black currants as advertised, but to me this was an enjoyable hop addition. But what did tasters think? Well, I presented the beer to 15 participants. Each taster was blind to the hop being used and were asked to complete a brief survey. Now, the radar graph shows tasters detected high levels of citrus character in both flavour and aroma. Tropical fruit also scored highly, particularly for aroma. Stone fruit was somewhat well represented as well. Some participants reported berry notes in aroma, but less so in flavour, and floral characteristics were also noted here. So pretty much in keeping with my own impressions. As for hop pungency, the majority of tasters reported this as moderate, with 5 participants rating the pungency as mild and then 2 as strong. There weren't any votes for extreme. Now next we asked which beer style this hop would work well in. As usual, American Pale Ale and IPA scored highest, with a single vote each for Saison and Pale Lager. I'd also consider adding Belgian Ale to this list. It's a bit of a detour from tradition perhaps, but I could see the stone fruit character of African Queen working quite well in a Belgian Dark Strong, for example. Then finally we asked tasters how much they enjoyed the hop. By their very nature, preference questions are subjective, and as usual, responses were all over the map, but generally this hop scored quite well, with a slight majority scoring it 6 out of 10 or higher. The most popular response was a 7. That's where I'd put my vote as well. One of my favourite Hop Chronicle beers so far, I'd say. But not my absolute favourite. So far, that award goes to Pacific Jade, and you can learn more about that hop in this video here.